Hi, everybody. My name is Brian Moore. I'm a senior data visualization and analytics consultant with Clear Intelligence, and this is part 3 of our 4-part series on building better dashboards through interactivity. Our focus today is going to be on how to create scroll buttons using parameters and parameter actions. If you check the notes below the video, you'll find links to a copy of the dashboard on Tableau Public that you can download and follow along, as well as a link to a blog post that outlines what we're going to cover today step by step. So we'll start off with a quick demo. So here's the dashboard we're going to be using. And anytime you have a dimension with a lot of unique values, displaying all of them with a scroll bar, which is Tableau's default presentation mode, can really hurt performance. So a common practice is to limit the results to just the top N. In this case, we're limiting it to just the top 10 records. But what if you want to see the next 10, or the 10 after that, or the 10 after that? So we can build these scroll buttons that allow you to view 10 records at a time without hindering performance. And in my opinion, it looks a lot nicer than a scroll bar and provides a much more satisfying user experience. So that's what we're going to learn how to build today. So to start, I'm going to create 2 new worksheets. I'm going to change the mark type to a shape. For this first one, this is going to be our left arrow. I've called it range decrease, and you'll see why in a little while. And I'm going to just choose a left filled arrow or triangle. And for the range increase, I'm going to change that to a shape and use the right filled arrow. Next, I want to go to the worksheet that I want to control using these buttons. And first, I'm going to create a parameter. So I have this parameter called lower range. It's just an integer parameter. I'm going to set the current value to 1. And I'm going to display that parameter on my worksheet here. The next thing we want to do is create the filter that's going to limit the results. So I have a calculated field here called the range filter. And I'm using index. In this example, index is basically just going to be the row number. So for this top value, it's going to be a 1. For the next value, it's going to be a 2. For the next value, it's going to be a 3. So I have these sorted, and then once I add my filter, it's going to compute down and give me basically the row number or the rank for each value. So the filter here, it's saying if the row number or the rank is greater than or equal to this parameter value, so greater than or equal to 1, and it's less than or equal to this plus 10. So this is to display 10 records at a time. If you want to display 20, you could change that to a 20, 30, or 50, or you could even use a parameter if you wanted to make that dynamic. So you can adjust that number there. And if I drag that out onto my filter shelf and filter on true, you can see it limits to just the top 10 rows. If I was to change this to 11, it's going to filter on the next 10. If I change this to 21, it'll filter on the 10 after that. But you may notice as you change this, the axis is also changing, which we probably don't want. Now we can't use a fixed axis because we have a dynamic field up here, so that's always going to be different. And as we're filtering and stuff, those values are going to change. But we want everything to be based off of this this highest value, so the number 1 ranked value. So there's a couple ways that we can kind of artificially fix that axis. The method that I prefer is to use a reference line for the max value. So I'm going to create a calculated field called range ref line. And this is just the window max of the field that's in our view, which is this metric calc. I'm going to drag that to detail. I'm going to click on analytics. I'll drag out a reference line on a table. Choose my range ref line. I'm going to set this to minimum. You can keep it on average. Just minimum computes a little bit faster. I'm going to get rid of the label, get rid of the tooltip. And now we have this kind of hidden reference line off to the side here. You can see as I go to the next set of records, that reference line stays in the view. So the axis automatically stays fixed and everything else is going to be sized proportionately to that first value. All right, so now I need to create some calculated fields that we can use to update the range parameter. So when I click Let me go back to the dashboard here. So when I click on the right arrow, I want to increase that value by 10 because we're viewing 10 records at a time. When I click the left arrow, I want to decrease that value by 10. But I also want to make sure that the value doesn't go any lower than 1 because basically it won't display any records. If we're looking at negative numbers, nothing is going to fit that filter criteria, and this is going to be blank. The same thing is true on the upper end. So we want to set it so it can't go any higher than the number of unique values that we have in our dimension. So we basically want to turn off the arrows when they've reached either their upper or their lower limit. So we'll start with the previous arrow. So first I'll create a calculated field to test if the range parameter is already at its lowest limit, or lower limit. So in this case, that lower limit is 1. So I have a calculated field here called lower range limit, and this is just a Boolean calc. It says lower range equals 1. So this is going to be true if it's at the beginning at its lowest level, or false if we've navigated it all. I'm going to drag that to color and set the true or false colors. So you can set these however you want. The way that I like to set them up is to have, when it's true, have it just be just a touch darker than the background. So you can't really see it. You can tell there's an arrow there, but it doesn't really look like you can interact with it. And when it's false, have something a little bit more accessible. So I have this light gray. So it really kind of pops on the dashboard. Then I'm going to create one more calculated field, and this is going to be the value that we want to pass to the parameter here. This is going to be called the range decrease. And this is saying if lower range limit, so if it's already at its lower limit, or if it's already set to 1, then keep it at 1. Otherwise, take that value and subtract 10 from it. And we will drag that to detail. All right, now on our range increase worksheet, we're going to create essentially the same two calculations. They're just a little bit more complicated on the upper end. So first we want to test to see if the range is already at its upper limit. So this is saying if we took that lower range parameter and added 10 to it, if that's greater than the number of unique values that we have in our view, then set it to true. Otherwise, set it to false. Again, we'll drag that to color, and we'll set the color for our true and false values. And then we need to create a calculated field for the value that we're going to pass to the parameter. So this is going to be called range increase. This is saying if we're already at our upper range limit, then keep that value what it is. Otherwise, add 10 to that parameter value. And we're going to drag that to detail. All right, then we'll go to our worksheet, and then we want to, go to our dashboard. We want to add those worksheets to our dashboard. So I'm just going to drag out a floating horizontal container. Drag out our decrease and our increase sheets. Get rid of this container over here. Hide the titles. I'm going to select my container and resize it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on formatting, but just want to get this down there. All right, and then we're going to add a couple of parameter actions to pass those calculated fields that we built to our parameter. So I'm going to go to Dashboard, Actions. First, I'm going to add a parameter for the range decrease. So I want to select just my range decrease worksheet. I want to update that lower range parameter, and I want to pass my range decrease value to that with no aggregation. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the range increase. So deselect those and select just my range increase worksheet. I want to update the lower range parameter. I want to pass my range increase value with no aggregation. Now, one last thing that we want to do, which we had covered in part 2 of this series, is we want to add a another action that will deselect these marks in between each time we click on them. So we can use a filter action to do that. So I'm just going to show you what it looks like without that. Basically, we would click on it once. See how this stays selected. Then we'd have to click on it again and then click on it again to drive that action. So we want to add a couple more dashboard actions just to adjust that. So I'm going to create 2 calculated fields. We already have these created from the previous step, but it's just going to be a calculated field called 0, where it's just a 0. Another calculated field called 1, where it's just a 1. I'm going to drag both of those to detail on both of my worksheets. I'm going to go to dashboard, action. I'm going to add a filter action. I'm going to select, starting with the range decrease, I'm going to select just that under the source sheets. Under target sheets, I'm going to select that same worksheet from the drop-down. So part 3, range decrease. I want to run this on select. Under target filters, I'm going to add a filter. Under the source field, I'm going to select 0. Under the target field, I'm going to select 1. Hit OK. I'm going to do one more for the range increase button. I'm going to select just my range increase worksheet. Select that from the drop-down, run and select. Add a filter, select 0 and 1. Hit OK. Now you can see as we click through these buttons, it'll go to the next 10 records. You'll see this automatically gets deselected in between each click, so you can just click on it again. And when you reach either of the ends, the buttons will turn off. So here it's at the beginning. If I click on that again, nothing happens. So that's all we're going to cover today. Keep an eye out on the blog for part 4 of this series, which will be coming in the next week or two. And have a great day. Thank you.